The chamber riot of false civility rose, of towering alien delegates there, jeweled robes shimmering under cold lights leaned forward as if they were all in on the same joke, their voices a collection of hisses, growls, and distorted clicks filled the council hall with a rhythm that sounded more like predators circling prey than a court of order. At the center, displayed for them like a caged animal, stood Admiral John Reeve. He had been dragged across half the galaxy to hear the verdict of Earth's existence. To the Council, he wasn't a man, he was the mouthpiece of a conquered species. The chains on his wrists were symbolic. Humanity had already been written off as beaten, weak, destined to bend the knee. The Council speaker, a towering creature with translucent skin and a skull-like fractured glass, lifted its 3 hands. Humanity will surrender, your fleets will be dismantled, your weapons turned to dust, your colonies annexed under the Greater Accord. Resistance is suicide. The chamber roared with approval. Chorus of alien voices savoring Earth's humiliation. Reeve did not speak, his eyes cold and unflinching scanned their faces. They expected pleading, fear, maybe defiance. Softened by desperation, what they saw instead was something they had long forgotten: contempt. The Council had studied humanity through intercepted broadcasts and fragmented records. They saw chaos, violence, short lifespans, endless wars among themselves. To the Council, Earth was a primitive backwater that had stumbled too far into space. They believed the sight of their armadas blotting out Earth's skies would be enough to shatter human spirit. They had no idea. When the session adjourned, guards shoved Reeve toward a holding cell carved into the Council station's lower tiers. He barely registered the sting of their electric prods. His thoughts were already elsewhere on Earth's orbit, where somewhere in the silence of the void the last phase of the plan was unfolding. Years ago, when the first alien vessels appeared, humanity's leaders debated submission. They counted ships, measured firepower, compared the fragile state of Earth's fractured nations against a galactic empire older than recorded history. Most believed resistance was hopeless. Reeve had been the lone voice in those rooms who refused to accept it. Hopeless doesn't mean helpless, he had told them. If they think we'll bow, let them believe it until it's too late. And so Earth played weak. Messages of compliance were sent, fleets were hidden, technology stolen and reverse engineered. In silence, entire shipyards were buried under oceans, beneath mountains, camouflaged in orbit around moons. For years, humanity built in secret while the Council grew comfortable in their arrogance. Now the time was almost here. In the dim light of his cell, Reeve replayed the sight he had seen before. His capture, the first wave of human warships slipping from the shadow of Neptune. Dozens of them, angular black-holed giants bristling with weapons whose blue glow whispered of stolen alien science sharpened with human ruthlessness. Behind them, smaller ships, fast and lean, swarmed like wolves. It was a sight even he hadn't believed would come to pass when this all began. The cell door clanged open. A guard sneered, baring rows of serrated teeth. Tomorrow, human, the Council announces, your people surrender, you will kneel before the galaxy. Enjoy your last night of pride. Reeve looked up slowly, meeting its gaze. For the first time since his capture, he spoke. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "You should look out a window," the guard snarled, slamming the door shut behind it. Reeve leaned back against the cold wall, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. Tomorrow the council would gather again, expecting Earth's chains to be fastened, but tomorrow the skies above Earth would no longer be empty. They would be filled. The station's artificial night cycle dimmed the corridors, but sleep was the last thing Reeve cared about. He sat on the steel slab they called a bed, staring at the cell ceiling, replaying every battle drill, every contingency he had written into the grand deception. He had been the one to insist on the silence, the false surrender, the years of swallowing pride while the council smirked at Earth's supposed fragility. Now that silence was breaking. Across the void, the first wave of ships had already reached their positions. Resolute, Earth's flagship, slid from the dark shadow of Neptune. Her hull was a slab of midnight steel, bristling with cannons that pulsed faint blue. The glow came from alien tech, scavenged in secret, rebuilt with human ruthlessness. Her engines, humming low and steady, had been designed to burn hotter and longer than anything the council thought humanity capable of. She was not a ship born of compromise or politics. She was built for one thing: war. Dozens more followed, a fleet assembled, not from the scraps of Earth's past, but from a desperation that had sharpened into brilliance. The Iron Dawn, the stalwart, the horizon's edge, each a monument to nights of hidden labor, to engineers who died in collapsed shipyards, to nations that had bled themselves dry in secret to feed the construction. They were ghosts the council never believed existed, now materializing into the star-L canvas of the solar system. And still more came, smaller vessels. Sleek frig darted like wolves around their larger kin, swarms of drones, detached, each armed with rail cannons, ready to fight and die with machine obedience. Humanity had built not one fleet, but three, each hidden beyond a different celestial body, now converging with ruthless precision on Earth's skies began to change. At first it was a shimmer. To those on the ground it looked like dawn had come early, patches of stars disappearing as shadows moved across the heavens. Farmers in Kansas paused in their fields, staring upward, as if a storm was gathering in space itself. In Shanghai, night shift workers leaned out of windows, cigarettes glowing as they squinted at strange silhouettes, blotting out constellations. Children in Lagos woke their parents, pointing at the streaks of fire carving across the horizon. "Their hours," whispered one man, his voice breaking as the first clear image broadcasted across Earth's emergency channels. Warships, human warships. For decades the news had been humiliation. Colonies surrendered, fleets dismantled. A council that treated Earth like a pet. Now, for the first time, humanity saw something different. Strength. The council saw it too. Inside the grand chamber, 1,000 alien eyes fixed on the live transmissions. Their fleets had been stationed comfortably beyond Earth's orbit, smug in their superiority. Their guns turned inward, ready to enforce surrender. But now sensor feeds crackled with impossible numbers. Human ships where none should exist, human weapons glowing with energy they weren't supposed to understand. The speaker of the council leaned forward, its translucent skull shifting colors with agitation. "Impossible. Their industry is fractured, their resources limited. This is deception." Yet no one in the chamber spoke to agree, because even as the speaker hissed, reports came in from across the system. Warships rising from the ocean, ship uncloaking from behind the shadows of moons, entire fleets lighting up. Scanners where only silence had been expected, the trap had been sprung. In his cell, Reeve could hear the tremors. Through the walls, council guards barked orders in their guttural tongues, boots pounding metal as alarms wailed above. The council had realized their mistake, and fear made them sloppy. He sat calmly, eyes closed, listening to the rhythm of panic. He remembered the conversations years earlier when leaders across Earth had doubted him. There too many, they had argued, will be crushed. Reeve had slammed his fist on the table. Then let them underestimate us. Let them think we're broken. Their arrogance is our weapon. Now the weapon was firing. The first council fleet moved to intercept near Mars. They expected the humans to scatter, to retreat behind Earth's fragile atmosphere. Instead, the Resolute led the charge. Her cannons, ignited with blue fire, beams slicing through the void. A council destroyer disintegrated in seconds, its shields pierced by energy it couldn't calculate. Behind her, Earth's frigs swarmed. They struck like wolves, diving between the massive alien ships, loosing rail slugs that punched holes straight through hulls. Explosions rippled in silence, scattering debris into crimson clouds. The council's discipline faltered. Their fleets were vast, but they had been built for intimidation, not desperation. They fought expecting weakness, and in that expectation, hesitation bloomed. Humans did not hesitate. On Earth's surface, the skies became wars. Canvas, from New York to Johannesburg. Civilians watched the feeds. Raw, unfiltered streams broadcasted from drones, satellites, and even civilian telescopes. For the first time in living memory, the council was not winning. Men clenched fists in bars, roaring with every alien ship that went dark. Children screamed with delight as frigates darted through fire like wolves in a hunt. And in bunkers, families cried together, not from fear but from a kind of disbelief that cut deeper than any despair had. Hope. In the chamber, the speaker rose, its voice shrill. This cannot stand. Double the fleets, burn their planet if you must, but end this farce. The council erupted in chaos. Some shouted for extermination, others for caution. Old rivalries surfaced as fear cracked their unity. They had expected a single day of triumph, a spectacle of submission. Instead, they were watching their fleets bleed. And deep in his cell, Admiral Reeve finally stood. He walked to the bard, slit that passed for a window, and tilted his head, catching a faint shimmer of light from the distant battle. He whispered words no guard could hear. Now you see us. Hours stretched into a frenzy of combat. Over Mars, human and alien fleets clashed in brutal silence, ships colliding like titans in the void. The Iron Dawn rammed a council cruiser, splitting its spine before detonating in a blaze that took 3 more with it. The stalwart unleashed her payload, missiles screaming across the dark until the stars themselves seemed to ripple with fire. But victory was not cheap. Human frigates burned by the dozen, crews suffocated as hulls tore open, sucked into cold nothing. For every alien ship destroyed, a human life was paid. Yet still they pressed on, not with the arrogance of the council, but with the stubborn fury of a species that had spent its entire history fighting impossible odds. The council couldn't comprehend it. Every species they had conquered had folded, had bowed to overwhelming might. None had ever fought like this. Bleeding, burning, sacrificing without hesitation. To them it wasn't strategy. It was madness. To humans it was survival. On Earth, governments activated emergency protocols, bunkers opened, sirens wailed, militias armed themselves. Not because the people expected surrender, but because they expected to fight. It wasn't submission driving them into shelters, it was preparation. If the skies fell, they would fight in the rubble. If the oceans boiled, they would fight in the ruins. Humanity was not a people who stopped at defeat. They had been bred in fire since the first man struck stone against stone. In the chamber, the speaker slammed a clawed hand against the days. Send word to the human prisoner. Demand his surrender. Threaten his world with annihilation. Guards rushed to Reeves's cell, dragging him into the chamber once more. He was forced to his knees before the council, chains clinking as alien eyes bore into him. The speaker's voice was thunder. Call them back, Admiral. Your people will be spared only if you order their surrender now. Reeve lifted his head slowly. His face was battered, his uniform torn, but his eyes burned with the same fire that filled Earth's skies. He scanned the chamber, letting silence hang, letting them feel the weight of what was already unraveling. Then he spoke. Look up. The chamber screens flickered again. Above Earth, the second wave of ships emerged from the shadow of the moon, hundreds more, larger than before, their hulls etched with the scars of desperate construction. They filled the sky in a wall of steel, blotting out constellations, blotting out doubt. The chamber fell silent. For the first time, the council did not look like rulers. They looked like prey. Reeves' voice carried through the hall. You thought we were broken. You thought we would bow. You thought wrong. And above Earth, warships filled the skies. The illusion of control shattered. In the council chamber, for the first time in centuries, their decrees did not ripple outward as law, but as desperation. The speaker barked orders, his translucent skull flashing crimson, signaling panic. Messengers scrambled through corridors, communications channels ignited with shrieks and static, and fleets across the solar system were commanded into action. The mask of superiority had slipped. But the council was not weak. Humanity's fleet had struck hard and sharp, but the aliens commanded empires, thousands of worlds feeding their war machine. Ships that hovered in Earth's orbit, only a fraction of what they could bring, and now, stripped of arrogance, they unleashed it. From the dark edges of space, reinforcements appeared. Vast carriers, dreadnoughts larger than cities, their silhouettes swallowing stars. They emerged from hyperspace, lanes like titans called to war, bristling with weapons that had subjugated countless civilizations. The battle over Mars became a graveyard. In minutes, the Resolute led a charge through the wreckage of destroyed Council destroyers, her guns blazing, blue arcs that cut through shields. But then the dreadnought Kazerot entered the field. Its first volley struck with the force of an asteroid, beams tearing through the human frigate Ashes of Dawn, splitting her into molten fragments. The Iron Dawn, already battered from its earlier sacrifice, was swarmed. Hundreds of smaller alien craft poured from the dreadnoughts' bays, encircling her like sharks around bleeding prey. Rail slugs shredded some, but sheer numbers overwhelmed Alien torpedoes pierced the hull, and the Iron Dawn broke apart, her final transmission a captain's last cry. Till Earth we stood. It was not just ships that burned, it was people. Thousands of voices fell silent with every explosion, every breach, every vessel gutted by alien fire. Humanity's fleet fought with fury, but the Council had numbers, discipline, and weapons honed from centuries of conquest. On Earth, civilians watched feeds go dark one after another, hope turned brittle, splintered by the sheer scale of the enemy's retaliation. Families clutched each other tighter in bunkers, tears streaming as they whispered names of sons and daughters who fought among the stars, and yet, despite the carnage, humanity did not yield. The stalwart rammed straight into a Council carrier, her reactors detonating in a white blaze. That took 10,000 aliens with her. The Resolute held position, cannons tearing into cruisers despite half her decks of flame. Frigates swarmed dreadnoughts like hornets darting through fire, loosing salvos before vanishing into debris clouds. Every loss cut deep, but every death was a choice. Humanity was making the Council bleed for every inch of void. In his cell, Admiral Reeve felt the tremors of the battle echo through the station. Dust sifted from the ceiling. Lights flickered. He could hear the distant boom of shock waves transferred through the hull when massive weapons discharged. The guards were more nervous now, snapping at each other in their guttural language. One of them lingered by the bars, eyes wide as the walls trembled. Reeve leaned forward, his voice calm, steady, cutting through the chaos. "You feel it, don't you?" he said. Guards snarled, baring its serrated teeth. "That shaking isn't us dying," Reeve continued. "It's you realizing we're not afraid of you anymore." The guard slammed its weapon against the bars, a hiss rumbling in its throat, but the tremor in its hand betrayed it. Reeve leaned back, smiling faintly. The cracks were showing. The Council chamber erupted in chaos again as fresh reports came in. Alien fleets were overwhelming humans near Mars, but the fight was dragging longer than anticipated. Casualty projections skyrocketed. Resources were being drained at rates unheard of in Council history. "This is unacceptable," one delegate screeched, its segmented body rattling. "They should have fallen already," another howled. The speaker slammed a hand down. "Then we will show them what true war means. Deploy the Scourge fleet. No more restraint. Reduce their planet to ash." A silence followed, fear even among the Council's ranks. The Scourge fleet was no enforcement armada, it was extermination. Planets burned under its fire. Species vanished into smoke wherever it appeared. The order was given. High above Earth, the second wave of human ships was already engaged when the Scourge fleet arrived. They tore from hyperspace in perfect formation, dozens of ships larger and more heavily armed than anything yet deployed. Their weapons glowed with a dark crimson light, hungry and merciless. The first volley rained down like judgment. Dozens of human frigates disintegrated in second. Rail slugs and missile barges erased before they could launch. Shields flickered, holes ruptured, and the space above Earth lit with fire. The people below could see it now. Even without feeds, the night sky pulsed with flashes of war. Families stood outside shelters, necks craned upward, watching the heavens bleed. Children clutched parents, asking questions no answer could satisfy. Still, the human fleet fought back. The Resolute turned its full broadside against a Scourge cruiser, ripping its shields apart with stolen alien energy. Drones swarmed in, sacrificing themselves to blind larger ship sensors. Frigates darted through the chaos, striking engines, forcing giants to stumble in the void. But the cost was rising. Captain Alvarez of the Horizons Edge stood at his command deck as fire swept across his ship. "We don't run," he barked, blood streaking his forehead. "Ram there." Engines, the Edge hurled forward, slamming into a Scourge destroyer, both ships erupting into fire that illuminated Earth's orbit like a second sunrise. Each death was defiance. Each wrecked ship was proof humanity would not die quietly. Back in his cell, Reeve heard the growing panic among his captors, shouts, alarms, boots hammering the floors. The station shuddered under distant blasts. He knew what was happening. The Scourge fleet was here. He had counted on it because the Council, in its arrogance, would always choose terror over strategy. They would overcommit. They would bring their hammer down too hard, too fast, and in that hammer swing they would open themselves to the counter blow. He stood as the guards argued, their attention scattered by alarms. One of them barked orders at another to report to the docks. The second guard fumbled, keys jangling on its belt as it rushed past the cell. Reeve moved like a soldier, fast and silent. He lunged forward, grabbed the guard's arm through the bars, twisted hard until bone snapped. The alien shrieked, dropping the keys. Reeve snatched them up as the other guard swung its weapon. The Admiral jammed the key into the lock, twisting with desperate strength. The door hissed open. He slammed it outward into the second guard's chest, bones crunching under the steel. The alien crumpled. Reeve stepped into the corridor, chains still clamped to his wrists, but his eyes burned with fury. The Council thought they had caged him. Now they would learn what it meant to trap a human. The battle raged above Earth. The Scourge fleet pressed harder, tearing into human defenses. But they had underestimated just how many ships Earth had hidden. From the oceans rose still more vessels, vast submarines surfacing and launching into the sky, transforming into orbit-capable ships humanity had secretly been building for years. From the Antarctic ice fields came Titan, their hulls black with frost, engines igniting with thunder, the skies filled with reinforcements. Every nation had given, every hand had built, every sacrifice had been for this moment. The Council wanted surrender. What they had instead was humanity's answer, war without apology. The speaker received the latest transmission just as Reeve's chains hit the chamber floor. The Admiral stormed into the Council chamber, flanked by chaos, alarms, smoke, guards scrambling. He had torn weapons from the hands of those foolish enough to face him now, carrying a plasma rifle in his chained fists. The Council froze as he entered. Rev's eyes locked on the speaker. "You wanted surrender," he growled, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "Instead, you'll get extinction if you push us further." The speaker's body rippled with fury. "You dare, I dare," Reeve cut him off, stepping forward, "because while you sit in your ivory chamber, counting species you've enslaved, my people are up there, burning for every inch. And unlike you, we don't stop when we bleed, we fight harder." The chamber was silent, alien eyes wide. Reeve raised the rifle, pointing it directly at the speakers Skull, look to your fleets, look at your dead, that's humanity's answer. And above Earth, amid fire and ruin, warships still filled the skies. The rifle felt heavy in Admiral Reeves' chained hands, but not unwieldy. It hummed with alien power. Plasma cells glowing like coiled lightning. He didn't need to be a marksman, he just needed the council to see what no species had dared show them. In centuries, defiance inside their own chamber. The speaker loomed at the disk, its translucent skull flashing crimson. Streaks of rage, around it dozens of delegates froze in silence there, jeweled robes twitching with nervous movements. For the first time since humanity had encountered the council, their voices were gone. Do you hear it? Reeve growled, stepping forward. His boots echoed on polished marble. That's your fleets dying, that's your war machine bleeding for every inch. The speaker hissed, 3 arms spread wide, trying to reclaim authority. You are one man, a single prisoner. You believe you can. Reeve fired. The bolt seared past the speaker's shoulder, vaporizing part of the days. Cries erupted from the chamber as alien delegates scrambled back, jeweled robes trailing. Guards poured in from side entrances, weapons raised. Reeve swung the rifle, firing again, a blast punching through the first guard's chest, dropping it in a smoking heap. Understand this, he snarled, pivoting toward the council. One man is all it takes, one man with the will to refuse. You multiply that by 8 billion and you begin to understand humanity. Delegates shrieked and hissed in terror. Reeve smashed the rifle butt against his chain, snapping one free, then raised the weapon two-handed, his aim steady. Now, you thought we were broken, you thought we'd kneel. You don't understand us at all. Above Earth, understanding came in fire. The Scourge fleet pressed harder there, crimson weapons carving through human defenses. The Resolute was battered, her hull torn open in places, flames venting into space. Captain Lee barked orders through smoke and chaos, his voice ragged. Helm, ram them if we have to. They want our surrender, give them our teeth instead. The Resolute dove into a cluster of enemy cruisers, her guns blazing. Rail slugs tore through one hull, plasma beams ripped through another, and then her prow slammed into a third, breaking it in two. All across orbit, human ships fought like cornered wolves. Frigates darted among dreadnoughts, targeting engines, sensors, weak points no alien commander thought worth defending. Suicide runs became strategy, every dying ship dragging 2 more into the void, but the cost was unbearable. Families on Earth huddled in shelters, screens flashing names of ships lost. Mothers wept quietly, fathers pressed fists to their foreheads. Children stared wide-eyed as flames lit the skies. Every loss was felt as if the whole planet shared one body, and yet, when despair whispered, the skies answered louder. More ships rose from beneath the oceans, titanic vessels surfaced, water boiling as engines roared to life. From lunar caverns came hidden fleets, their black holes scarred from years of secrecy, now burning bright as they launched to join the fray. Humanity had bled itself dry to build them, and now they were here. The aliens watched in disbelief. Every time they thought humanity was finished, more came. It was as if Earth itself had decided to fight. Inside the council station, Reeve pressed his assault. He moved through corridors, now filled with panic, alarms wailing, smoke curling through vents. Guards fell one after another as he used their own Weapons against them, each alien he dropped was a step closer to something greater than survival. The station was more than a prison. It was the Council's heart. If he could break it even a little, humanity wouldn't just be fighting ships, they'd be fighting the Empire itself. He kicked open a control room door. Inside, a cluster of technicians froze, their glassy eyes wide. Without hesitation, Reeve shot the ceiling. Plasma fire raining sparks. Out he barked. They fled, chittering in panic. He slammed the door shut and turned to the console. Alien glyphs swirled across the display, incomprehensible at first. But Reeve had studied. Years of intelligence work had burned some of these symbols into his mind, enough to make sense of fleet commands, enough to disrupt. His fingers flew, clumsy but driven. He rerouted docking bay doors. He jammed comms. He activated emergency lockdowns across entire decks. The station buckled under its own confusion. A message blinked in alien script. Reeve squinted, lips curling in a grim smile as he translated it. Scourge. Fleet status. Engaged, high casualties. Good, he muttered. The council chamber was no longer a place of order. Delegates screeched at each other there, languages clashing like chaos. Some demanded extermination, others begged for retreat. The speaker tried to restore command, but fear was a poison, and it had spread. One delegate, its scaled body quivering, slammed a fist on the table. This is different. They fight like no species we faced, then burned their world. Another shrieked, and waste fleets we cannot afford. The chamber devolved into chaos. Centuries of unity unraveling in the face of a species they thought beneath notice. Back above Earth, the battle turned desperate. The Scourge fleet had numbers, but humanity had fury. A young pilot, Lieutenant Harris, gritted his teeth as his fighters' alarms blared. His ship was bleeding plasma, controls failing. He had seconds before the reactor blew. His comm crackled with voices screaming, crying, dying. He locked onto the engine core of a dreadnought. Tell my daughter, he whispered, voice breaking. I didn't bow. His fighter slammed into the dreadnought's weak point, and the explosion tore the alien behemoth in half. The blast lit Earth's orbit like dawn. Across the fleet, more like him made the same choice. Pilots rammed, captains detonated, crews sacrificed everything to drag more of the enemy into death with them. Each flame in the void became a torch of defiance, burning so brightly the whole world could see. Reeve's sabotage rippled outward. Alien warships near the station received conflicting orders: retreat, advance, hold. Docking bays opened at random, scattering fighters unprepared. Supply lines were severed, communications jammed. The Council had never faced sabotage within their own heart before. Reeve grinned through blood and sweat. You thought Earth was weak, he muttered to himself, but it's you who can't hold the line. He turned from the console and grabbed the plasma rifle again. He wasn't finished. On Earth, civilians poured into the streets despite warnings. In New Delhi, crowds gathered on rooftops, chanting as flashes lit the skies. In Rio, families hugged strangers, watching together as human ships carved streaks of fire across the night. In Moscow, old veterans stood shoulder to shoulder, saluting the heavens as if their children could see. Hope and grief mingled like smoke. The Council had wanted submission. Instead, they had awakened something Raw, deeper, older than their empire. Could fathom humanity was not a species. That surrendered, they were a species. That defied. The speaker, shaking with fury, slammed a claw into the chamber floor. Enough. Deploy the final fleet, burn there. Planet to ash, delegates screamed at. Once some in agreement, others in fear. The chamber fractured, unity was gone. And into that chaos walked Admiral Reeve. Rifle raised, eyes blazing. You can. Send every ship you have, he said, his voice steady, cutting through there. Shrieks, but Earth will stand even if you kill us, even if you glass our world, you'll never erase us because we'll be the scar you'll never heal. From the speaker bared its teeth. You are alone. Reeves stepped closer, the rifle aimed straight at its head. Look at your fleets, look at your dead. Does it look like I'm alone? The chamber fell silent again. Alien eyes flicked to one another. Fear had spread, doubt had rooted. For the first time in centuries, the council did not feel immortal, and above Earth, amid fire and ruin, humanity still filled the skies. The chamber lights dimmed with the sudden strain of power surging through the station. Reeves' rifle still aimed at the speaker's head, but his eyes flicked to the giant screens along the walls. They glowed crimson with fresh warnings. New fleet arrival, estimated strength overwhelming. The speaker's skull lit with cruel satisfaction. You see, your people bleed in vain. The final fleet arrives, Earth will burn before your eyes. Reeves' jaw tightened. He didn't lower the rifle. You keep saying that, and yet here I am still breathing, and your fleets are still dying. But even as he spat the words, he knew the truth. The final fleet changed everything. Above Earth, the void tore open. Hyperspace ruptured like glass, shattering, and from the wound poured giants, dreadnoughts larger than mountains, carriers spilling rivers of smaller craft, siege ships bristling with crimson cannons, their very silhouettes built for planetary annihilation. The Scourge fleet had been terror. This was extermination. The sky itself seemed to sag beneath their mass. Cities on Earth looked up in horror as stars vanished, swallowed by steel and fire. Every telescope, every feed, every camera filled with the same image, an empire descending to erase them. The first volley came swift and merciless. Crimson beams lashed across orbit, slicing through ships as if they were paper. Entire formations disintegrated. The frigate Valor's edge vanished in a blinding detonation. Her crew's last scream cut short. The carrier Nova lost shields instantly. Her decks shredded open. Thousands of souls hurled into the void. Earth's fleet answered, but their guns were dwarfed. Missiles launched in waves. Rail slugs streak like meteors. Plasma beams carved into alien hulls. Alien ships burned, but they burned slower. The Council's final fleet was built for war without limits. Admiral Hall, aboard the Resolute, wiped blood from his eyes as his ship rocked under another impact. Helm evasive. Keep us in the fight. We can't hold much longer, his lieutenant shouted, gripping the console as sparks rained. Then we buy them every second we can. Holt growled. He keyed comms. All ships, stand your ground. Earth stands only if we do. Voices crackled back. Steady, broken, weeping, but unyielding. Yes, sir, for Earth, till the last gun. In the streets of Earth, chaos and unity clashed. Families ran for bunkers as alarms howled, but many stopped to stare upward. They could see the battle with their own eyes now. Flashes of fire, scarring the heavens, debris falling. Like burning rain, in Chicago an old man knelt on cracked pavement, whispering prayers for his grandson. Aboard the Resolute, in Cairo, a mother held her children tight, telling them the stories of human resilience, of wars fought and won against impossible odds. In Moscow, a crowd gathered in red square, refusing to go underground. They stood together, watching the sky as if their sheer defiance could hold the enemy back. Everywhere people knew this was the end or the beginning. Inside the council station, Reeve moved with brutal purpose. He fired short bursts down corridors, guards dropping one after another. Each kill wasn't just survival, it was humiliation for the council, proof that their heart could be pierced. But he couldn't do it alone. He reached a detention block, cells filled with other prisoners, beings from conquered worlds. Their eyes widened as Reeve stormed in, rifle glowing. On your feet, he barked. You want freedom, you want revenge. Now's your chance. The guards turned in panic, but Reeve was faster. He dropped the first with a bolt through the chest, then hurled the second into the cell bars. The prisoners surged forward, tearing the guard apart. With desperate fury, Reeve smashed the console with his rifle butt, and the cells hissed open. Alien prisoners poured out. Tall, scaled warriors with broken horns, insected creatures with trembling limbs, even frail beings with haunted eyes. They had been beaten, starved, silenced, but now with the council distracted and Reeve at their head, they found something they had forgotten: rage. Arm yourselves, Reeve shouted, tossing plasma rifles. Scavenged from fallen guards, we take the station or we die trying. A roar answered him, not human, not alien, but something greater. The sound of the enslaved finding their teeth again. Above Earth, the battle grew worse. Final fleet pressed closer, their crimson beams hammering Earth's defenses. The Resolute limped, her engines crippled, half her decks gone. Hall stood bloodied, refusing to sit as his crew shouted damage reports. Admiral, if they fire their planet killers, Earth won't survive. I know, Hall lisped, eyes burning with defiance, so we make damn sure they don't get the chance. He keyed open all channels. To every ship still breathing, we're going to hold them here. We're going to bleed them so hard they choke on us. Earth isn't theirs. Not now, not ever. The fleet answered, not with polished reports, but with raw, broken voices, filled with fury. For Earth, for our children, for every soul they've taken. And with that, the humans charged. Frigates dove into enemy lines, guns blazing until they detonated in fire. Fighters swarmed dreadnoughts, kamikaze runs carving holes through armored hulls. Carriers stripped of defense rammed into siege ships, detonating their reactors in white-hot fury. Every sacrifice was a scream into the void. We will not kneel. On the council station, rebellion ignited. Reeve led the prisoners through corridors, now thick with smoke and fire. Guards fell back, unprepared for resistance. Inside their own walls, delegates screamed and fled as firefights erupted. In the very halls where conquest had been planned for centuries, an insected prisoner, her mandibles slick with blood, hissed as she cut down. Guard, we thought humans were weak. Reeve grunted, blasting another soldier. We are until you push us too far. They stormed into another control room. Scattering technicians, Reeve shoved one aside and scanned the displays. He could See the battle over Earth, the human fleet tearing itself apart to hold the line. His heart clenched, but his voice stayed steady. Route all power to external comms, he barked. The prisoners stared at him. Confused, Reeve grinned, grim and sharp. It's time the galaxy hears us. On Earth, radios crackled alive, feeds shifted, screens flickered across the entire planet and beyond. The broadcast cut through. Admiral Reeve's face appeared, bloodied. Chains still clamped around one wrist. Rifle slung over his shoulder, his voice was but steady, carrying with it the weight of a species refusing extinction. This is Admiral Reeve of Earth, he said. To the Council, to the galaxy, to every world watching, I have one message. Humanity does not surrender. His words echoed into homes, into bunkers, into ships locked in battle. You've taken world, you've enslaved species. You thought Earth would break like the others, but you don't understand us. We fight when there's no hope left. We bleed, we burn, but we don't kneel. You want our chains, you'll have to carve them from our corpses. The prisoners roared behind him, their voices a chorus of fury. Reeve's eyes burned into the camera. And if you think Earth dies alone, look around. Your empire is cracking. Your own slaves are rising. You thought you ruled the stars, but today you learned fear. The feed cut, but the message was out. Across the galaxy, species long broken by the Council stirred, chains fell. Lighter, whispers of rebellion lit like sparks in dry grass. The speaker's ray shook the chamber as it slammed claws into the floor. Kill him, silence him now. But even as it screamed, gunfire echoed down the corridors. The Council station was no longer a place of order. It was a battlefield, and above Earth fleets burned in equal fury. The Council's final fleet pressed harder, but humanity still fought. Holt aboard the Resolute wiped blood from his face, gripping the console. They want to kill our world, then let's make them fear it first. His ship turned, engines flaring, weapons blazing one last time. All batteries fire, everything. The Resolute unleashed her full payload, a storm of fire tearing into a dreadnought. She didn't survive the counterblow, but her explosion crippled the enemy ship, sending it tumbling. The crew died, screaming defiance, and Earth still stood. The speaker's bellow rattled the Council chamber, its translucent skull pulsing with violent crimson streaks. Shut down that broadcast, trace it, kill him. But it was too late. Admiral Reeve's words had already spread like wildfire. Transmission relays had carried his voice across the Empire before the Council could sever them. Billions heard him, soldiers in garrison, slaves, mines, merchants in markets, prisoners in chains. For centuries they had known only silence, despair, submission. Now they heard something new, defiance on a mining world in the outer rim. Insectoid workers bent beneath overseers. For generations they had labored, their wings clipped, their language forbidden. The guards barked commands until the broadcast flickered across a dusty screen bolted to a wall. This is Admiral Reeve of Earth. Humanity does not surrender. The miners froze, antennae twitching, mandibles clicking in disbelief. The humans, primitive upstarts, were fighting back, not just fighting but standing against the Council itself. One miner straightened, refusing the lash. Another picked up a discarded tool, holding it not as a shovel but as a weapon. The overseers shouted, but their voices no longer carried weight. The first strike fell, sharp and final, and rebellion sparked in the dirt, on a slave world where amphibian children had been taken from their families to serve. As attendance, the broadcast came. Through the central feed, a little boy stared at the screen, wittied as Reeves' bloodied face declared, "We bleed, we burn, but we don't kneel." He whispered the words. His overseer slapped him down. The boy rose again. Lips split and whispered louder. Others joined, whispering until the chamber trembled with their chorus. The overseers beat them, but the words would not stop. They had tasted the sound of resistance. The council had ruled through fear for centuries, but fear was fragile. It thrived only when silence suffocated hope. Now silence was broken, and once hope was born, it spread like fire in dry grass. Above earth, fire ruled the void. The council's final fleet pressed the attack, siege ships aligning to deliver the death blow. Crimson beams flared, tearing through orbiting defense stations. Human ships broke apart, venting fire and bodies into the endless dark. The Resolute was gone. The Iron Dawn was gone. Dozens of frigates burned there, names already carved into Earth's memory, but still the humans fought. Captain Silva of the Vanguard stood with blood dripping into his eyes, his bridge a ruin of sparks and flame. Helm, bring us about. Target that siege ships ventral core, sir, we're crippled. Then let's an NBSP them too. The Vanguard dove, her weapons firing. Everything left, missiles, rail slugs, plasma bursts. They ripped into the siege ship's underbelly. Shields failed. A reactor ruptured. The alien giant split apart, venting flames that engulfed half its escort. The Vanguard didn't survive the blast, but her sacrifice carved a wound in the Council's final fleet, and humanity roared on Earth's surface. Millions crowded in bunkers, watching flickering feeds. Children pressed against screens, whispering prayers. Families clutched hands as names of fallen ships scrolled endlessly, but despair no longer dominated. Grief was tempered by something new. Pride. In London, a man shouted at the screen, voice cracking, "They're not stopping us." Others joined, fists raised, chanting in unison. In Lagos, crowds filled the streets despite sirens, chanting Earth's defiance loud enough to echo across the city. In New York, people climbed onto rooftops, pointing at the streaks of fire in the sky. The heavens were burning, but they were burning with humanity's fight. Inside the council station, rebellion turned corridors into war zones. Reeve led the charge. Prisoners at his back, smoke choked the air. Alarms wailed. Gunfire rattled through gilded halls built for rulers, not soldiers. Guards fell under the tide of rage. Delegates cowered behind sealed chambers, their jeweled robes now ash stained rags. The prisoners fought with desperation, sharpened into steel, clawed hands ripped weapons from guards. Insect warriors stabbed with stolen blades. Even the frailest prisoners struck with fury, every blow fueled by decades of humiliation. Reeve fired his plasma rifle until it hissed empty, then ripped another from a fallen guard. His voice cut through the chaos, steady and relentless. "Keep pushing, take their heart, make them choke on their fear." They stormed into a command center, scattering alien officers. Screens filled the walls, showing the battle over Earth, the spread of riots on council worlds, the panic of an empire unprepared for resistance. Reeve slammed his fist onto a console. Patch me back into their fleet comms. An insectoid technician turned rebel. Scrambled to obey, its claws tapping. Alien glyphs, a channel opened. Crackling with council fleet chatter. Orders, screams, confusion. Reeve seized. The mic, his voice thundered into enemy. Comms, this is Admiral Reeve, to every council ship above Earth, you think you face only humans, look again, your empire is rotting beneath you, every species you've chained is rising, every lash you've cracked is coming back for you. You don't fight one world, you fight the fury of the enslaved. The council fleet wavered, some captains hesitated, others barked denials. But the seed was planted. Doubt had entered their ranks. On the battlefield, hesitation cost lives. Council destroyer faltered, its captain uncertain. A human frigate seized the chance, slamming missiles into its engine. The alien ship spun out of formation, colliding with its own cruiser. Both exploded. The hesitation spread. Alien pilots who had crushed rebellions without thought now trembled as they faced fighters that rammed without fear. Commanders who had mocked humans now faltered as transmissions of uprisings poured in from their home world. For the first time in centuries, the council fleet did not fight with unity, and humans pressed harder, but unity did not mean victory. The council's final fleet was still vast, their weapons still burned hotter, their ships still outnumbered Earth's by 10-1. Humanity fought with fire, but fire consumed itself. For every alien dreadnought lost, 3 human frigates died. For every council carrier crippled, a human city shuddered under falling debris. On Earth's surface, panic and defiance mingled as wreckage rained from the sky. In Paris, a burning cruiser tore through clouds before crashing into the sea, sending waves flooding coasts. In Nairobi, flaming debris scorched the savannah, turning night to dawn. The world was bleeding, but the world still breathed. On the council station, Reeve knew the truth. We can't win by force, he muttered, eyes scanning the chaos on the screens. Not yet, but we can break their spirit. He turned to the prisoners. We hold this station, we make them afraid of their own heart. If they can't command from here, their fleet scatter. Insectoid rebel hissed agreement. They are not gods, they can bleed. Reeve nodded. Then let's make them. The speaker, locked inside the central chamber, snarled as reports flooded in. Fleets faltering, rebellions erupting, riots spreading. Its voice shrieked into comms, exterminate them, burn Earth now. But the order was no longer absolute. Some captains obeyed, others hesitated. A few turned off their comms entirely. The empire was unraveling. On Earth, the people didn't know the scale of rebellion across the stars. They didn't need to, they could see. Their skies burning, and they could see their ships still fighting. Children clung to parents, whispering, "We're still here." Old soldiers clenched canes, muttering, "Give them hell." Crowds screamed into the night, "Earth doesn't kneel," and in orbit battered ships answered, the horizon's ashes. Engines failing, rammed into a siege ship, detonating her reactor in a blaze that lit half the sky. The Steelheart, out of ammunition, charged its drives until they overloaded, turning itself into a weapon that gutted an enemy carrier. Every death was a message. Humanity would not be erased. Inside the council station, Reeve raised his rifle high as prisoners cheered. Around him, smoke filled the air, the floor slick with blood, but their voices carried like thunder. This is only the Beginning, he told them, his voice ragged but steady. Earth fights for her life, but you fight for your freedom. You've seen the truth. Now the council bleeds. Their fear is greater than ours. Let it spread. Let it burn, and don't stop until their empire is ash. The prisoners roared again, their voices a chorus of species once broken, now bound by shared rage. And as the council's fleets faltered, as their empire shook, as Earth still burned but refused to die, a single truth echoed across the stars. Defiance was contagious. The void above Earth was no longer a battlefield. It was an inferno. Ships, human and alien, floated as burning wrecks, silent tombs drifting in orbit. Debris rained through the atmosphere, streaking fire across the skies. The Resolute was gone. The Iron Dawn was gone. The Vanguard, the Steelheart, the ashes of dawn, all gone. Their names already carved into the memory of Earth, but still fragments of the human fleet fought on. Frigates, blackened and scarred, circled like wolves, missing half their teeth. Fighters limped through smoke, guns blazing until their reactors cooked themselves. Carriers that had lost all their planes turned themselves into battering rams. Every death was no longer strategy, it was defiance. And the council, enraged, prepared its final answer. In the chamber of command aboard the dreadnought Jarrett, a captain pressed its claw to a console. Glyphs flared crimson as it activated weapons never before aimed at Earth. Planet crackers, each siege ship carried them. Massive cannons, designed not to kill armies, but to tear apart continents, to boil oceans, to glass worlds until nothing breathed. They had been used before on rebellions that rose too high, never on Earth until now. The weapons began to charge, crimson light bleeding across their hulls, growing brighter with each second. On Earth, skies lit with unnatural fire. As people looked up and saw the glow of death aimed at their world, crowds screamed, shelters shook, governments prayed. The order came from the council speaker itself. Erase them. Inside the council station, Reeve ran. Smoke and screams filled the corridors. Prisoners surged behind him, stolen rifles in their claws and hands. Blood smeared the walls. Guards lay scattered, and alarms howled across every deck. The admiral's lungs burned, but his stride never faltered. He knew what the glow in the skies meant. He knew the council was about to do what he had warned his people of since the beginning: erase Earth. If he didn't reach the station's core and seize control, Earth would not see another dawn. They stormed a checkpoint. Alien guards dug in behind barricades. Plasma bolts seared through the air, cutting down 2 prisoners instantly. The insectoid warrior hissed and threw itself forward, claws raking, dragging a guard down. Even as it died, Reeve fired in controlled bursts, dropping 2 more before diving behind a console. Push through, he roared. Every second we waste, Earth dies. The prisoners surged, screaming in languages the council had tried to silence for centuries. They broke the barricade with raw fury, tearing the guards apart, and pressed onward. Above Earth, captains made their final choices. On the crippled frigate Enduring Flame, Captain Morale stood on a bridge lit only by fire. His ship had no weapons left, no engines worth speaking of. The crimson glow of the siege cannon filled his screens. "Sir," his lieutenant whispered, voice trembling. "That's it, isn't it?" Morales nodded. He wiped soot from his face, staring at the glow of the planet. Cracker, his crew watched him broken. But unyielding, he smiled faintly. Then, we don't wait for it to fire. Helm. Ramming course. The bridge went silent. Then slowly his crew straightened. Yes, sir, the enduring flame turned. Her broken engine screaming, dragging. Her burning carcass toward the siege ship. The alien vessel fired to swat her aside, but the frigate kept coming, hull tearing apart under the barrage. Morales stood tall until the last second. For Earth, he whispered. The enduring flame slammed into the siege ship's cannon, detonating in a blinding explosion. The weapon collapsed. Inward, its charging core imploding. The crimson glow flickered and died. One cannon silenced, but dozens remained. On Earth, cheers erupted in shelters and cities as the glow dimmed. For a heartbeat, hope surged, but then they saw the other weapons still charging, their light bathing the sky's crimson. Hope cracked under terror. Parents clutched their children. Crowds screamed prayers and curses. Old soldiers clenched fists, muttering, "Hold just a little longer." The planet itself seemed to hold its breath. Inside the council station, Reeve and his rebels reached the final barrier. Massive doors sealed the path to the core, the command nexus of the entire station. "This is it," Reeve growled, rifle raised. The speaker's voice thundered through hidden speakers. "You are too late. Human, your world dies now and you die here." Gunfire erupted as the doors blew open. From the other side, council elites poured through, armored and armed with heavy plasma cannons. The corridor turned into a furnace of fire. Prisoners fell screaming, bodies shredded. Reeve dove into cover, teeth clenched. Plasma blasts scorched the air inches from his head. He looked at the insectoid rebel beside him, its mandibles trembling. "If we don't break them, Earth dies." The creature nodded, eyes burning with the same fire as his. "Then let's break them." They surged from cover. Plasma bolts ripped through the insectoid's chest. But it kept charging, claws raking, dragging two elites down. Reeve fired until his rifle hissed empty, then swung it like a club, shattering a helmet and driving the barrel into another soldier's throat. The corridor became a grave. When the smoke cleared, Reeves stood bleeding, chest heaving, surrounded by corpses. Only a handful of prisoners remained, but the doors to the core stood open. Forward he rasped. Now, above Earth, the siege weapons neared full charge. The crimson light bled brighter, blotting out stars. Human ships hurled themselves against the council line, burning in kamikaze strikes. Fighters dove like meteors, ramming engines. Frigates overloaded reactors, detonating themselves in white fire. Each sacrifice slowed the cannons, but not enough. The last human carrier, the Shield of Dawn, took a direct hit. Her decks vaporizing in an instant, she broke apart in orbit, raining debris across the Pacific. On the ground, millions wept as her signal went dark. But still, survivors shouted defiantly, "Into the night, we're still here." Reeve staggered into the core chamber. It was vast, a cathedral of steel and light, with consoles stretching in every direction and a pulsing reactor at its center. Glyphs glowed along the walls, displaying fleet commands, weapons status. The charging siege cannons aimed at Earth. The speaker's face flickered across every screen, its voice a hiss of triumph. "You cannot stop us. Your world burns. Your species ends." Reeve spat blood onto the floor. "Not today." He lunged for the console, hands flying across glyphs. He didn't understand them all, but he understood enough. Years of study, stolen intelligence, desperate nights, memorizing alien symbols had led to this moment. Behind him, prisoners held the doors, firing wildly at guards pouring in. Screams filled the chamber, bodies dropping, blood-staining steel. Reeve. One shouted, "Do it!" He slammed his hand on a glyph. The screens flickered. Siege cannons glitched. One dimmed. Another faltered. System scrambled. Under conflicting commands, the speaker roared, "Stop him!" Reeve bared his teeth. "I told you before, you should have looked out a window." He pressed the final glyph. Above Earth, half the siege cannons flickered and died. Their crimson light vanished, plunging the skies into darkness. On the ground, crowds erupted in cheers, screams of joy mixing with tears. In orbit, surviving ships shout in disbelief. Cannon arrays are failing. They're turning on each other. Earth still lives. The Council fleet staggered. Some ships glitched there, weapons shutting down. Others fired on their own allies under scrambled commands. The line broke and humans surged into the gaps, tearing into crippled vessels with savage fury. Inside the core chamber, Reeve slumped against the console, blood streaming down his arm. His vision blurred, but his smile was sharp as steel. He looked at the prisoners still standing there, weapons glowing. "Hold this, hold it, until Earth breathes free." They roared agreement, voices carrying like thunder, and outside, amid fire and ruin, Earth still lived. The Council's doomsday had faltered, but the war was not over. The void above Earth was a graveyard. Wreckage drifted across the black, flaming husks of ships, tumbling silently as the battle waned. Alien dreadnoughts floated, crippled there. Hulls cracked and burning. Human frigates lay shattered, their crews now frozen. Whispers among the stars, yet through the ruin, survivors still fought. The horizon's last limped on failing engines. Her hull split open, but her guns still spitting slugs. The echo of dawn, no shields left, fired its final missiles into a carrier before tearing apart under return fire. Fighters with half their wings missing rammed into engine, detonating themselves in blazes of fire. Each sacrifice was a heartbeat longer for Earth. Each death bought another second of sky. On Earth's surface, people watched, crowds filled rooftops despite the danger of falling debris. Families pressed against screens and shelters. Priests prayed in shattered churches, their voices drowned by the roar of millions outside. The world had never felt so united, not in peace, not in prosperity, but in defiance. Every time a human ship exploded, the world screamed its grief. Every time an alien dreadnought fell, the world roared with pride. Above them, fire carved the heavens. Inside the Council station, Admiral Reeve leaned heavily on the console in the core chamber. His uniform was scorched. Blood soaked his side. His vision swam. Around him, the surviving prisoners fought desperately at the doors, holding back waves of guards. Every second they held was another second Earth lived. He forced his eyes to focus on the displays. Half the siege cannons were gone, their system scrambled by his sabotage. The others still glowed crimson, charging again. The speaker's voice hissed from every screen, filled with fury and desperation. "You cannot stop the inevitable, human. Earth dies. Your resistance is ashes." Reeve spat blood onto the floor, his voice a rasp. "Funny, you said the same thing yesterday." He slammed his hand across Glyphs are routing commands, the cannons flickered again, their power stuttering. Alien crews screamed through comms, their systems turning against them, but the strain on the station was too much. The core shook, alarms blaring, sparks raining from the ceiling. He had bought time but not victory. In orbit, Admiral Holt's successor, Commander Rains, stood on the shattered bridge of the Horizon's last. His crew was down to a handful, their consoles dead, their ship more wrecked than vessel. But when the cannons flickered again, hope lit in his eyes. They're faltering, a lieutenant cried. Rains nodded, his voice steady. Then we give them the last of us, helm ramming course. Find the biggest bastard left and let's drag him down with us. The crew straightened. No hesitation, they had long since accepted their fate. For Earth, they said as one. Horizon's last turned, engines flaring, with everything left, and hurled itself into a dreadnought. The impact lit the void with a blaze that burned through the darkness. Earth's fleet was dying, but they were taking the Empire's monsters with them. On Earth, people screamed as the sky lit again, this time brighter than before. Children cried, parents clutched them tighter, but through tears came words no Empire could erase. They're not giving up, we won't either. Earth stands. Inside the council chamber, chaos reigned. Delegates screamed at one another, their unity shattered. Some demanded immediate retreat. Others shrieked for extermination. Others simply wailed in fear. The speaker slammed claws into the daze, its skull glowing with violent crimson. Silence, I command you, but no one listened. Reports flooded in, rebellions on slave worlds, uprisings in colonies, fleets turning against each other. The empire that had ruled for centuries was unraveling in days, and it had started with Earth. Reeves' strength faltered, he collapsed against the console, vision dimming. Around him, rebels roared in desperate battle, holding the line as guards pressed harder. His mind swam with faces of the fallen, ships lost, friends dead, children on Earth staring at crimson skies. He wanted to rest, to let it all end. But then he remembered the words he had spoken into the council's heart. Humanity does not surrender. He forced himself up, blood dripping from his chin. His hand slammed onto the console one last time, overriding system after system until alarms screamed louder. The station's power grid buckled, lights flickered, and then, with a sound like thunder across the void, the station itself turned against the fleet. Its defense batteries, meant to guard the council's jewel, swiveled outward. Plasma fire streaked into the council's own ships, tearing through them in bursts of betrayal. Alien commanders screamed in disbelief. The speaker shrieked in fury, but Reeve only grinned, blood in his teeth. You wanted Earth's surrender, he whispered. Instead, you got Earth's answer. Above Earth, the tide shifted. The council's fleet, already battered now, reeled under fire from its own station. Dreadnoughts staggered, carriers burned. Siege ships faltered as their cannons collapsed under redirected energy surges. Human survivors seized the chance. Frigates darted into openings. Fighters tore through gaps, crippled. Ships rammed with final defiance. The council line broke, one by one. Their giants fell, exploding into flames that lit the void. The last siege ship tried to fire, but its weapon overloaded and detonated, tearing it apart. Earth's skies cleared, not of fire but of enemy ships. The council fleet was shattered. On Earth, silence fell for a heartbeat. People stared at the skies, waiting for the next crimson glow, waiting for the final death blow, but it never came. Instead, the heavens burned with falling debris, not weapons but the corpses of an empire's fleet, and then slowly the silence turned into a roar. Cheers erupted in cities and shelters, in ruins. People screamed, wept, embraced. Strangers sang through tears. Entire nations shouted as one, their voices carrying into the night. Earth stands. The world had survived. Inside the council station, Reeve collapsed to his knees. Smoke filled the chamber, flames licking the walls. Rebels pulled him upright, shouting, but he barely heard them. He had done it. Earth lived. Humanity had not surrendered. The speaker's voice hissed one last time through the speakers filled with venom. You think you've won, human? You've only doomed yourselves. The council will rebuild. The empire will rise again. Reeve spat blood, glaring at the screen. Then we'll burn it again as many times as it takes. And with that he smashed his rifle butt into the console, cutting the speaker's voice forever. Battle was over. Not victory, not truly. Earth was in ruins, its fleets shattered, its people bloodied, but they had done what no species had ever done. They had defied the council. They had survived the storm meant to erase them. And in their survival they had shown every chained world in the galaxy that the Empire could bleed. Days later, Reeve stood on Earth's surface, his body wrapped in bandages, his uniform scorched. He walked among the ruins of a city, crowds gathering around him. Children stared at him, wittied, whispering. Soldiers saluted through tears. Civilians pressed hands to their hearts. He looked to the skies, still scarred by debris, still burning with wreckage. It wasn't over. The council still lived. The war wasn't finished, but Earth stood, and that was enough for now. He turned to the crowd, his voice but steady. They expected us to kneel, he said. Instead, we filled the skies, and we'll do it again as many times as it takes. Humanity doesn't surrender. Not now, not ever. The crowd roared, voices shaking the heavens, and across the galaxy, whispers of rebellion grew louder, because the council had learned a truth they would never forget. Humanity wasn't the weakest. Humanity wasn't broken. Humanity was the scar that would never fade.